Welcome to Essential Ingredients, powered by NextGen Purpose. EI serves up thoughtful conversations with industry leaders and pioneers who support a regenerative future for our food system. The stories shared by our guests are meant to spark curiosity and inspire informed global change. Welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. With me today is Rick Vanzura. He is the CEO of Freight Farms. Welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Justine. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. It took us a while, but we're happy to have you here now.
Yes.
So the best things are the ones we've waited for, right? They come with the greatest reward. So
we'll try and make it that way.
Exactly. So for those that are not familiar with Freight Farms, can you give us just a little quick overview before we dig deeper and get into our conversation?
Sure. We've been around about 10 years. We build farms, provide software and consumables that allow you to grow about 2.5 acres worth of food in an 8 by 40 foot customized shipping container anywhere in the world, from temperatures ranging from -40 to plus 120 degrees. And we are now in 49 US states. 40 countries. We have the world's largest network of IoT connected commercial farms. And we're operated by both for-profit and not-for-profit organizations for a whole host of reasons, but it really comes down to growing hyper-local, sustainable, fresh produce anywhere, anytime, and democratizing access to food.
Okay, so we packed a lot in there, and I really appreciate that. But now I want to break it down a little bit so that everyone understands what we're talking about. So you mentioned IoT. And for those listening, I would like to just ask you, what is IoT?
Yep. So IoT stands for Internet of Things, and that's really connecting the internet to devices that allows you to make the most of them. So our software is connected to our hardware, our farmhand software, and it's internet enabled. So the benefit of that is you can take advantage of the software and operate the farm from literally anywhere in the world, mobilely, and take advantage of all the capability that the internet provides.
So so give me an example, if you wouldn't mind, or give me a couple examples of where are some of the places people have these farms?
Yep. So we're in the Middle East, we're in Northern Europe, we're in Tasmania, we're in Egypt, we're in Mauritius, we're in the Yukon in Canada. Again, we're in 49 US states. So we're all around the world. We're in every continent except for Antarctica and unfortunately South America. Hopefully we'll get there this year. Again, that's one of the great advantages is anywhere you are in the world, you can have the exact same climate as any other farmer growing a particular crop because the farm will control the environment for you.
Interesting. So is there a certain amount of space you need for this farm?
Yep. So the containers are 8 by 40 feet. So we recommend that people have a 2-foot perimeter around the farm so they can operate. So you need a 10 by 50 foot flat piece of land that's capable of supporting 8 tons and hookups to power and water and the internet. And then you're off and running.
And then are they managing this on the internet, or are you managing this on the internet?
Yep. So it's really a combination. So one of the values of having this farmer network is we've been able to take the collective experience to create recipes for specific crops. And if you just want to grow a crop according to that recipe, romaine lettuce, you click romaine lettuce and the software will manage it for you. Light cycling, nutrient delivery, interior environmental control, temperature, humidity, etc. Or if you're an expert farmer or trying something where we don't have a recipe and you want to do your own thing, the software allows you to do that as well. Through the software, not only the farmer has access to it, but we have access remotely to all farms. So we're able to do diagnostics and have our customer success team help out if any of our farmers in the field want to check in and ask a question about something.
So I'm super curious. What's your background?
Definitely not Agtech. So I started my career in consulting and banking, and I won't take you through blow by blow, but most of it has been in consumer multi-unit, either restaurant or retail. I was co-CEO of Panera Bread.
Heard of that?
Yeah, founding CEO of Wahlburgers, the celebrity burger chain, which could be its own podcast. Chief Strategy and Business Development Officer for GameStop. And no, I don't own a boatload of stock. I became a bajillionaire off of GameStop. And then I used to run international and Walden Books for Borders Group, the book chain back in the day.
I remember Walden Books.
So do I. I loved Walden.
I remember going to bookstores.
Yeah.
It's like a distant memory.
Yeah. In fact, we were at Barnes and Noble last night, so it was great to see, even if it's not Borders, that in the day of online, there's still a home for physical books, which I love.
I like Strand books, but
yeah, one of the OGs, as they would say.
That was my favorite bookstore. So
yeah,
wow. Okay. So with all that, what was the inspiration for this? I mean, your background is clearly, I mean, it's varied, right?
Yeah.
Robust, impressive, all of those things. And so what was the inspiration for this, and how did you get from there to here?
Yeah, well, we have 3 children. 2 I would describe, for lack of a better term, as pretty woke. 1 would be particularly woke, including a now vegetarian, had been vegan. But she came to me one day and essentially said, "Hey, Dad, way to live the capitalist dream, but when are you going to do something for the planet and the greater good?" And during my time at Wahlburgers, frankly, I was troubled by the thought of sort of promoting methane production via cattle, and we were one of the early adopters of Impossible Foods. So when the 2 co-founders of Freight Farms approached me about joining and described this mission, these dual missions of democratizing access to food and providing this hyper-local sustainable resource, I was like, wow, sounds like the right mission at this point. But I also like the business model and thought that it could scale, because I like running larger businesses. So 3 years later, still around, having a good time.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it's always amazing that, these kids are so forward thinking. I think back to when I was young, I thought I was so much more immature. I wasn't forward thinking. I wasn't that smart. These kids today are so forward thinking. They're so smart and they're so inspirational.
Yep.
Where we are today.
So much more access to global information and global points of view than certainly I know I had growing up in New Mexico. So yes, and our kids are examples of that every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think culturally I was exposed to it because I went to the United Nations school, but that was more about culture. It wasn't really about the impact, on the world and global and our planet. So I'm always super impressed. And wow. So, okay. So where are you guys in the US?
We are in every US state except for South Dakota.
So why not South Dakota, out of curiosity?
It's a good question. I think just South Dakota is obviously not one of the bigger states, so there's just less of a pool of available farmers. Having said that, extreme climates is where we really shine. So we should be in South Dakota, and we're making it a mission to get there.
And what's the response been from the farmers on this?
It's my favorite part of the job is really getting to interact with the farmers, because they are by and large mission driven as well. And they all have really varied backgrounds. One of our value propositions is you don't have to have a farming background. because the software does so much of it for you. But that means we have people who sort of come from every walk of life, profession. It's a pretty broad age group, from folks who right out of college want to do this as an entrepreneurial, mission-driven venture, to folks in retirement who aren't really ready to retire and want to own their own business, to everything in between. So I would say, the reaction always starts as kind of a wow. When you just look at the technology and you hear about it, it's a wow. And then you go through, I'd say, a little bit of a shock and awe phase, because at the end of the day, you're still farming. There's still tasks. You still need to have attention to detail. And it's still a job. And then after kind of getting through that, it's really, I would say, this shared sense of community and mission and pride in what they're doing. And we hear that a lot, that people feel good about the mission, and also just being in such close proximity to food. And, for folks who are used to commercial produce that's been shipped thousands of miles and it's already several days old when they consume it, getting hyper fresh, it's just a revelation, like what flavor, texture, color, everything can be. So that part of the wow factor stays.
Yeah, I mean, the accessibility to have all the different kinds of produce is real. I mean, here in California, we get amazing produce, right? And I remember when I first moved here, I got different produce than I did in New York at different times of year. And I had to learn what to cook because it was very different. And it was interesting. So I'm curious, because now with what you're saying, you're going to have a completely different experience, right? Because you're regulating and you're choosing what you want, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yep, that's right. That's
Right.
right. And part of the choosing it, if you're in an extreme climate or a resource deprived place, whatever you grow is going to be dramatically different, because it's the only way to get it locally. I would say we still have plenty of farmers in California. And as you said, obviously produce is plentiful, but one of the advantages of the farm is because it's highly controlled, you can create custom characteristics like a spicy arugula, or grow hard to grow specialty crops like a wasabi arugula. So even in California, you can offer somebody something that they don't normally have. And so I would say, to that extent, in some ways, we can be even more surprising in California, because folks who go, I live in California, I've had, romaine lettuce or arugula or French radishes. We're like, well, try this one grown this particular way under this recipe and see what you think.
Oh, that sounds fun. I want to do that in my garden. I'm sure
Control it tightly enough.
and I'm sure this is something that's really appealing to chefs.
Absolutely. In fact, one of our favorite success stories is MGM Greens in Montgomery, Alabama. They use their farms to supply their restaurants under vintage hospitality. It's a key part of differentiating the experience for them. And last year they won Alabama Restaurant of the Year. And this year, or I should say in 2021, they won Restaurant of the Year.
Okay.
In 2022, their executive chef, Eric Rivera, won Chef of the Year. So we took some vicarious pride from having participated in that.
I mean, I know that when they do a lot of the building now, I remember this from when I lived in New York, on top of the buildings, a lot of the chefs in the restaurants are building their own gardens to use for cooking, right? So if they have the space, whether it's New York, Nashville, wherever, Florida, wherever, they could, if they had the space, Napa, put your garden in, and then really go to town on what they're providing, because a lot of them are already doing their own gardens, but why not make it more unique and diverse Is there any downside? Is there any, are you getting any pushback for any reason? Is there anything negative?
Well, I would say for an individual restaurant, you may not need 2.5 acres worth of crops.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's
But
where
you might do it if it's a group.
yeah. So a lot of our growers focus on restaurants as clients, and then I would say, from our restaurant standpoint, there's really no downside because you're getting something that's unique and different, and that is why it's one of the primary markets for our growers, because chefs really appreciate getting something that will set their menu apart, and being able to have a source where you can get that consistently because you can control that climate year round.
Right. I mean, to me, it's I love to cook and I love to be different and unique. So that sounds fun. I'm curious. I know that many times they say you should eat locally and you should eat what's growing in that season. Have you thought about that?
Yeah. So totally get that, sort of the Alice Waters
Right. Yeah.
aesthetic, and I am all for creating seasonal menus that celebrate the seasons. Having said that, different people want to accomplish different things with what they're eating, and I would say that's a aesthetic choice. It's not a choice tied to nutrition or any sort of fundamental, lower tier of Maslow's hierarchy value. So if you're a chef that just wants to use local farms and purely track the season, more power to you. If you are a chef that says, I want to do mostly that, but I also want to have an occasional surprise and delight, for somebody to say, wow, I actually get to go counter seasonal with this thing, then we provide you that opportunity. And then for other chefs who say, I really either don't want to be bound by the seasons and what I could offer, or what's important for a lot of chefs, for whatever reason, I'm just not in the mode where I can constantly be rotating my menu. I want consistency, but I would like consistency around a temperamental crop. Then we can provide you consistency as well. So, on a broader point, I get asked a fair amount about, well, indoor ag versus soil ag. What do you think wins or is more important? I say, you're creating a false question. In the long run, we need all forms of ag. They all play their particular role. And the more forms of ag we have, the greater the food supply, the greater the diversity of the food supply, the greater of the options we're providing. So at the end of the day, that allows the consumers to make the choice and not have the choice forced on them based on limitations of the agricultural system.
I think it also gives greater access, because it goes back to my original comment was that in some places we just don't have the same access. And you're also providing access to those that don't have the same access you might have in one place versus another. So outside, for chefs, it provides one solution. For others, it may provide another solution. So, I asked the question because I know that some of our listeners are interested in that. But I also think we have listeners that are around the world and around the country that may not have the same access. And for them, this could be a very good solution. And I think, that's not to be glossed over, right? I think that that's really important to hear, that in some of those places, you don't have the same access to those vegetables. It's also about variety too. Sometimes you just want a little bit of variety. And then you have people that, they need to be able to have access where there isn't any and it's not affordable, and to be able to access it is just very expensive. So if by doing this, you can then have greater access, it changes the whole, the whole platform for people.
Absolutely. And as I think I mentioned earlier, that really was the founding mission of the company, was democratize access to food.
Yeah, so I mean,
Democratization requires making it accessible anywhere, making it affordable, and making it easy for anyone to farm. So yes, accessibility is at the core of what we're about.
yeah. So I mean, I try to ask all the questions so that we can really talk to everybody that's listening and watching, because there's so many different types of people here. We have founders and researchers and people that are building better for you businesses and good for you businesses, which is what I like to call these now, because they're not just better for you, they're good for you. So how long have you been doing this now?
So I personally have been at it for 3 years. The company's been around about 10.
Okay. And so what's your plan in the next, let's just say 3 to 5 years for Freight Farms?
Yep. So job one for sure is customer success, both on the for-profit and the not-for-profit side. So a huge part of what we invest in is fundamental research on improving crop yields, improving crop diversity, developing new crop characteristics, developing better business tools for our for-profit farmers to help them be successful, develop programming like STEM for our not-for-profit customers who would like some programming to go with.
That's a great idea. I love that.
And then a big part of it is connecting the community, because at this point we have over 1,000 farmers around the world, and their collective experience just adds a ton of value beyond what we can do on our own. And then for us, our core solutions are our farms, our software, and our nutrients. So we will continue to develop different, variations on the farm, different modular variations. We'll continue to enhance our software to make it more productive, make it easier and less time consuming to operate the farm. And then we put a lot of work into the nutrients to make sure they're optimized for specific characteristics. But it all comes back to that customer success side, because we know in the long run, our ability to succeed is 100% tied to our customers' ability to succeed and keep getting better results from the farm.
Yeah, I think customer success is so important, and integrating with them and talking to them and hearing what's working and what's not. And to that end, I'm wondering, is there any conversation around including their experience and their recipes and what's working for them into your recipes that you have for success around the crops?
Absolutely. In fact, monthly we have a farmer roundtable. We just had one, I think it was Tuesday night, with about 40 farmers who attended, and people are very good about sort of sharing what they've learned and best practices. So we're constantly taking their feedback to improve the solution. And we're also constantly connecting farmers where, if it's something that really isn't an issue that applies to the whole community, but it's some particular issue that a direct conversation will sort out, we'll play that connector role. But yes, that's part of the value of the community, is we all are kind of continuously working to make each other better. And at Freight Farms, we sort of play the role of documentarian and institutionalizing whatever makes sense for the broader community.
So whether it's a chef or an individual that wanted to have a freight farm because they had the land and they had the inclination, how would they go about getting that for themselves?
Yep. Well, I think for anybody, the starting point, a good starting point, is freightfarms.com, our website. It provides a bunch of information on product specs for the farm, what we've grown, specific farmer examples, both for profit, not for profit. And if after people go through the journey through the website and say, wow, this looks like it might be for me, there's a contact us button where they can fill out a form, and then we'll follow up with them however, makes sense based on the feedback we get. But again, we've invested a lot in that resource, so hopefully when people go on it, that'll give them plenty of information to decide whether they want to engage a little deeper.
Just to give people an idea, what is the commitment in the beginning to learning and sort of the time frame from
Yep.
start to getting it going?
Yep. So I'll answer that in two ways, sort of the time and the money part. So our farms sell for $149,000. The software is $200 a month. Consumables, the nutrients, about $350 a month, and then you have to pay for delivery. So call it all in $160,000 to get to your first harvest. So the typical journey is after somebody decides they want to engage with Freight Farms and fills out that form, they'll be put in touch with somebody from the sales team. A big part of that sales journey is to actually make sure that the prospective customer understands kind of what they're getting into, thinks about what their business model would look like. We have a business planning tool where we encourage a prospective farmer to complete that, where sort of create their own P&L and business plan, and think about how they would market. So if somebody goes through that process and says, yes, I want to buy, then from there, the main steps are to come in for training. Takes about a day and a half. You could do it remotely, but we encourage people to do it in person. It's just a richer experience. Plus,
Where is it in person?
Boston.
Okay. Not a bad place to go for training.
Not a bad place. You can have a fun weekend, and you get to meet a lot of the folks that hopefully will be, your community members and friends down the road. So a day and a half will get you to where you can start to farm. Our typical lead time for a farm is about 3 months from placing the order till you receive the farm. During that time, you can work out things like, do you need to worry about zoning? Where are you going to put your farm? Managing the hookups, etc. The farm comes fully assembled and ready to go. It typically takes 7 to 8 weeks to go from installing the farm to getting your first harvest. And we provide a lot of support during that first.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm just curious, as as a business, because these people are coming, and as you said, some of them have little information. They've never been a farmer before, but it is an entrepreneurial endeavor. So this is for the entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, these people need to be forward thinking and need to think like entrepreneurs and have a business sense, right? But how much support are you guys providing, or are you looking for, to make sure that it's kind of a match, right? Because you want them to be successful, right? You want it to be a success both ways. So can you talk to me about your process and what you're looking for there, and then sort of the kind of what you guys created to make sure? Because I think we also have a lot of founders here that listen to these podcasts, and I think it'd be really interesting to understand the process that you guys create for yourselves that ensures or tries to ensure success.
Yep. So earlier in our history, we found that we did have folks who bought farms and weren't successful, and we generally found two driving characteristics for that. One is it's somebody who had an idealized image that it's sort of the Jetsons, push a button and lettuce comes out the back end, and really hadn't thought through that the software takes a lot of the thinking, the complex pieces out of issue through the recipes, but there's still the manual process of planting seedlings, transplanting into the cultivation area, harvesting, maintaining the farm. And you need to be diligent about following through on the steps. It's not particularly complex, but you've got to be willing to put in the work. And there are some people who just, I would say, frankly, used to a desk job and really weren't prepared for what it meant to be a farmer. So we now, as part of the sales journey, really test that on, and we built up in our sort of farm training curriculum, here's the life of a farmer, and make sure you connect with that. Because some people love it and really connect with it, some people don't. The second thing is that people really connect with the farming piece, but not so much with the marketing, and you got to sell it. And so that's where the business planning tool during the sales process and really working through them with them on how do you set a market, how do you determine market pricing, how do you create your business plan, how do you think about distribution, and looking at the person's background and how they go through that journey to say, are you really prepared to be a farmer? Once they've gone through that and they've committed to making the purchase, then we reinforce that with a lot of training, which is not just around operating the farm, but it's on the business aspects of it. And our customer success team, again, will be really involved in that first harvest to make sure people get through that first harvest successfully, but also think about how do I use that first harvest to set my market, because sampling, for instance, is one of the most powerful sales tools you have. So I would say from the first time a salesperson encounters somebody who's interested through that first harvest, we have put in a lot of checkpoints and a lot of curriculum to try and make sure we've done as much as we can to set somebody up for success, recognizing, like any entrepreneurial venture, people can still encounter issues.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's really pivotal for any entrepreneur on any journey. These stories, when we share them, it really inspires them and helps them to decipher some of their next steps on their journey. So I really appreciate you joining me today, and I will make sure that we share your website. And for one last time, if you would just share it with everybody, so if they want to investigate further, they can.
It is freightfarms.com. So look forward to meeting you all, hopefully somewhere down the road, or many of you, as you do your exploration, and enjoy the website. There's a lot there to sift through.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation, learned all about your background and what you guys are doing. And I look forward to seeing how you guys continue to grow in the next few years. To learn more about these episodes and access show notes, go to nextgenpurpose.com and choose podcast. If you like this episode, head to Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform to subscribe and leave us a review. Visit the Next Gen Purpose YouTube channel to subscribe to our EI videocast and give this episode a like while you're there. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Next Gen Purpose, and connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Justine_Reichman. Thanks for joining us.